Hey, what's not quite so easy is to try and figure out messaging from politicians. Let's start with some of that, shall we?
Sure.
This is actually an article, and he's not asleep, Mr. Luxon. Well, he might be asleep at the wheel after today's comments, but there's not a picture of him being asleep. We're not doing a Joe Biden on him where he falls asleep in a meeting. But this is actually from an interview 2 days ago. We played some of this interview yesterday, but I didn't play this part of it. This part of it is Christopher Luxon warning New Zealand about why not to vote for the left, which has pretty much been the narrative of Christopher Luxon for the past 12 months. But he says something quite interesting that the host then does not pick up on, and I wanted to talk to you about it. Let me just play this audio and video first from Christopher Luxon, then let's have a chat.
I think what is incredibly worrying is that you've got Te Pati Māori, the Greens, and many members of the Labour Party saying they want it. You've got Chris Hipkins saying he's not going to do it, but let's be clear, after the election, he will bend to the will of the Te Pati Māori and the Greens. And I just
you don't
think a
know
wealth
that,
tax
though,
would
do
be
you?
incredibly destructive. Well,
You
let's
don't
be
know
clear.
that that's what would happen.
Well, we do. In a coalition of chaos, you cannot tell me that, Chris Hipkins is not going to want to form a government with the Greens and Te Pati Māori. Central policy for them is a wealth tax. That's destructive for New Zealand. Puts a wrecking ball through the economy.
Dangerous line to be going on about a coalition of chaos when we're not quite sure what's going on with who you would partner up with.
And remember, this was 2 days ago, let alone what's happened today. But we'll keep going.
On their policies, there is time still with 52 days to go to clarify some of these.
Well, I'll be really clear, and I think the choice is incredibly stark to New Zealanders. It's just more of the same with a coalition of chaos, or it's a strong, stable, national-led government. And what we're saying very clearly to New Zealanders is if you want a guaranteed change to the government, there's only one thing to do, and that is to party vote national. There
you go. So we've given them the party political broadcast there, Shane. The thing I found really interesting about that particular little snippet was when he was talking about bending to the will of Te Pati Māori and the Greens. So the warning to New Zealand from Christopher Luxon is, careful New Zealand, that those two parties will take Labour further left. Although Te Pati Māori is not further left, but there'll be things that Te Pati Māori want and the Greens will take them further left. Now, Anna Burns France has missed this. The most obvious question that should have been asked that is, hang on, Mr. Luxon, if New Zealand should be worried about the Greens and Te Pati Māori causing Labour to bend to their will, shouldn't we be worried that National will have to bend to the will of ACT and New Zealand First? Now, that question was never asked. I think that's the most interesting part about what that conversation could have been. So they didn't do it, so I think we should. So what do you think? Yeah. Do you think that there's a equal danger from both sides? Is one more dangerous than the other? What are your thoughts?
Look, I think that the biggest danger to the National Party itself is a rampant act that National is absolutely reliant on to take the Treasury benches. They want austerity. Now, and we're talking about deep dive austerity, some that we have not seen since Rogernomics and euthanasia. They can talk about cuts in terms of spending and
$1 billion. $1 billion on day one is what ACT wants.
But low hanging fruit. They can do low hanging fruit about someone puts on a function that costs $40,000 or even a spend of $5 or $6 million. The reality is that most of the money in terms of government expenditure is spent on welfare.
Yep.
And a large lump of that actually is superannuation.
Yep. Retirees,
right?
100%.
Yes. Then you've got health and you've got education.
Yep. They're the three big
So
ones.
the reality is for ACT to save the type of money that they're talking about, balance the books and give tax cuts, the only way they can do that is to gut that spending, and the first folks to bleat in terms of my predictions will be middle national voters, because they will feel the hurt and they will feel the pain. So I think that it's a huge danger to the National Party, and I don't think that Luxon has quite realised that. He does have a little bit of insurance, and the insurance is Winston Peters at 5%, because Winston, look, he talks a big game when he's in opposition, and there's been a lot of stuff that my good friend Shane Jones is talking about that has really quite upset me, and I don't think he believes half the shit he's talking about, by the way. But that's his insurance, because Winston is a bulldog on the Huskings, but a bit of a poodle once he gets in, once he gets to government. But I just think that if the National Party is reliant on ACT to form a coalition government, we're going to see austerity, and we're going to see neoliberal economics greater than we saw under Ruth and Asia, and greater than we saw under Rogernomics. Because here is the thing: David Seymour was an absolute ideologue. He's held a consistent policy position from first day he arrived in Parliament. He hasn't got involved in the peripheral issues apart from race baiting. He stuck to his neoliberal lines, and he will want to deliver it absolutely. He's not going to put up with 5 or 6 charter schools. He will want core changes in public spending and tax breaks or tax cuts.
Lots of chat in the chat, as you would expect. National will bend to the will of ACT then, says JK. Brett says Hipkins should bend now and do a capital gains tax. National bends to the knee of millionaires. Guru says the coalition of Chris Chaos.
Yeah, Chris Chaos.
Gary says National Act equals a coagulation of carcass. That's quite clever. I quite like that one. And then this one, the coalition of cookers. Now, this came up last week. Cookers meaning conspiracy theorists.
Yes.
Even today, there was a new photo that came out of an ACT candidate, Felix Poole, which is this guy here, from Mangakiki, holding up a "Don't Tread on Me," which is the Texas sort of, it has a lot of connotations to it sign. Yeah. And so these people are here, and they're in there, following on from having to bend the knee to ACT or New Zealand First. Two things, right? The first thing is New Zealand First only comes into the equation if first they get there, and I'm not convinced of that. And second is if National needs them. So in other words, if it can be National and ACT without New Zealand First, then New Zealand First becomes irrelevant, because nothing can get passed without them. So even if it was National and ACT up to 59 seats, then there's not enough to get anything passed anyway. So that's more of a comment. The second thing is, what do you think about all? I mean, I know you wouldn't have been surprised. Like it's the most unsurprising headline of the week award goes to, but the ACT Party, not only being this austerity threat that you're talking about, but also being full of conspiracy theorists and, I'll use the word nut bars in a colloquial kind of way. What are your thoughts?
Oh, look, I'm not surprised. And you don't have to dig very deep to find folks of a similar view in terms of New Zealand First. And, Winston played that card early when he went to the protest in Wellington and has grown that. And he's he's been consistent throughout the years in terms of being able to feel a slight pulse that gets him that 5 to 6% mark. And I think as we get closer to the election, we'll flush more of these folks out.
Do you think it matters? Because I haven't seen anyone inside the top 15. Let's say ACT brings 15 people in. The people that they seem to be finding out about, like number 48 on the list, do you think it matters? Or is it, because the way I thought about it yesterday, Shane, was it doesn't even feel like so much it's about who the candidates are. What matters is this is actually the constituency. These are the people that are going to vote for ACT. So even if you don't have a Voices for Freedom person in the caucus, you've got lots of them who have voted for you, who then would have expectations of what they want you to do. Absolutely.
And look, we just have to see who is turning up regularly to National Party meetings. And, earlier on this year, they purposefully held their meetings at 11 o'clock a.m. on a Thursday in Hawaki and Tamaki Makaurau or Northcote, because they knew that they were going to get the sort of the baby boomers and above,
the Blue Rinse Brigade,
the Blue Rinse Brigade along. And most of the kōrero at those type of meetings are not about economic direction. It's not about how we manage our tax intake. It's about Maoris having too much say. It's about flaming the around issues of co-governance. And they've built that support in and around the peripheral. And the thing about building your support around the peripheral, it doesn't tend to hold long. You lose them as quick as you grab them, particularly when you are in government and you know the reality, or you're cast upon with the reality. You're not able to deliver for those folks.
Speaking of meetings, of course, and I think I saw you commenting on this on Twitter today. There was a meeting, I think, today by the ACT leader who made the claim. I always, when someone makes a claim, Shane, I always go, what's your metric for that claim? How do you measure that? But the claim that was made today, for people who don't know, by Mr. Seymour, was if Nelson Mandela was alive today, he would be campaigning for ACT. This is what the leader said. Launching his 45-minute talk at the Motari Hills Community Centre on Thursday, Seymour told the 250-strong crowd he'd listened to people across the length of the country, and 2/3 of New Zealanders are annoyed. He probably didn't break down what they're annoyed with, because I wonder if 2/3 of those 2/3 are annoyed with them. But, you know, I mean, he's going to come out and he's going to go, I was joking, or I was this, or I was that. But, I mean, I almost find it offensive. He would even float the idea that Nelson Mandela would vote for ACT.
Nelson Mandela was a Marxist. Read the Freedom Charter, which I cut and paste. He believed in ownership of the means of production, minerals, etc. And let me tell you something, Pat. If this was 1981 and Seymour was around, he would not have been a supporter of Nelson Mandela. He would have been on the other side of the barriers that, in terms of the ones that I faced, or the batons that I faced from the police. He would have been pro-apartheid. He would have said sports and politics don't mix. He would have said that it's none of our business. And he certainly wouldn't have supported the end of apartheid through economic sanctions. He's just rewriting history, and we know it's bullshit.
Yeah.
And also because it has so little credibility, he makes himself look stupid.
Yeah, and that comes through pretty clearly from people who think, oh, for fuck's sake, says Free Soul. Mr. Anderson says 45 minutes, oh, the humanity. Did not see that claim. Wow, he's unhinged. Nelson Mandela, when he was alive, was a member of South African Communist Party, the ANC.